Well, hey y'all, my name is Katie Duncan. I am from a little town outside of Augusta, Georgia called Thompson. We are very well known for the Masters tournament, if any of you are golf fans out there. This is my first time ever recording a video on my phone, so this is very awkward for me, and I'm going to try not to make it awkward for you guys. But I'm 28 years old. I am a wife and a mama to a sweet 2-year-old little boy named Cole. I work at our church, which is amazing. I am the Dream Team coordinator, which means I get to serve alongside of and with our volunteers at our church. It's phenomenal. I love it. I'm very thankful. Never thought ministry would be something that I would want to do, but here I am loving it. Definitely the Lord in this whole setting. So this is really exciting. This class is I think something that will probably shape my thoughts and my viewpoints on leadership in the Christian world. I know I have worked other jobs before. I actually was a banker before we had our son and decided that I would be a stay-at-home mom before the church called crazy story. But when I was a banker, you kind of go through a lot of different bosses and you go through a lot of different leadership just because banking is there's a lot of turnover, especially in the higher ups, because people are constantly getting promotions to move up to the next thing, stuff like that. So I felt like we kind of went through a lot of change in that regard. Had some great leaders, and I had some not so great leaders. Had some people that it was really hard to work for and hard to get along with, but then other people who I felt like led really well and from a really great place. So I think for me, one of the biggest things that I've noticed from going from like a secular job to being in ministry is that leadership looks so different depending on what you do. And for me, in leadership, I feel like in a church setting, it is so unbelievably important to remember that at the end of the day, these are leaders that have been put in place, and that their authority is very important. I actually did a study called Undercover by John Bevere last year, and it was probably one of the best things I've ever studied. John Bevere is phenomenal. His entire family is phenomenal. They just love the Lord, and they're very talented people. And if you've never done this study, like I would suggest, from executive pastor all the way, to whoever, this really fits everything all across the board. So anyways, in this, you learn that all authority is God-given. And I think I had to really accept that that leadership, that even when I don't agree with it, it's still God-given because it's authority. So I think one of the biggest things that has really helped me and has really shaped me in my job is that through the leadership, I am learning how to be a leader myself, and I'm learning what I don't want to do and what I do want to do. With my job, I get to love on over 200 people. It's amazing. It's phenomenal. I'm so thankful, but it's also a really big thing to carry when you don't really know how to be a leader from a Christian standpoint to begin with. And so I'm really learning that kind of full throttle, kind of jumped into it, and it's been really great. I've had some great leaders ahead of me to teach me and to show me what that means. But I am so excited for this course because I feel like this for me is probably going to be one of the most helpful things that I could experience. We actually, we are going through transition in our church right now. So our senior pastor has let us all know that he will be stepping down over the next year. So as most of you probably know, with Church of God, the state overseer will come in, the state overseer will meet with our board, and then from there, the new pastor will be chosen, basically. And so I think through this transition, this class is actually going to be probably one of the most helpful ones to help me to understand what healthy leadership and true leadership looks like. In our last homework assignment, it was literally about what is true leadership. And I think that's such a great question because I think our book, I think it describes it perfectly, that true leadership does come from those three places. It really is coming from conviction, oh my gosh, sorry, I'm blanking. But it is starting in that place of conviction, of where you need this passion to fuel you to be a better leader. And then it's moving into the culture of the church and what that looks like. I think one of the best things that I could tell you, for example, is that we as a staff in our church, we can feel the fact that our leadership has been a little bit different over the past couple of years, because the culture of our staff has gone down, and the morale of our staff and the unity of our staff, all of that has gone down. And it's actually been like, we're in a really hard season, if I could just be really blunt and honest with you. So I'm seeing firsthand how important leadership is, and how important healthy and real and true leadership is. And even more than that, like how our book is talking about the processes that need to be put in place. That's so important. I think if we don't have processes set in place and systems set in place from the beginning, it's almost like, what's the point? Like, how do we ever expect anybody else to grow into this leadership role? And in reality, it's just going to look like us leading the same people over and over and never getting any other different results. And I don't feel like that's what the Lord calls us to. I just finished the Gospel of John. That was one of the classes I took last semester. And in that class, we really kind of dive deep into Jesus and his ministry, obviously, but also into the disciples. And I think, like, for me in this season of life that we're in, there is no greater example of leadership than the disciples, than these guys that trusted the Lord and were given authority. Like, at the end of the day, Jesus chose them, and he chose to give them authority to lead. And so for me, I actually can't think of a better example of leadership. I mean, obviously there are a ton in our Bible, but in the Bible, but I do think that for the most part, for me, what keeps sticking out over and over again is these disciples. And like John the Baptist, who, like, they claimed he was Christ, and he's like, no, I'm not, like, but I want to know who he is. And then you have other people like Peter, who, even after everything he put Jesus through and denying him, like, Peter still so much wanted to know Jesus better and to love Jesus better and to honor him in his life. And so they're just great examples of selfless leaders. Now, of course, we can keep going with that and kind of move to modern day. And you have so many people. Like, you have people who are like these wonderful, phenomenal pastors that we all know and love. I'm really involved. Like, I love Life Church with Craig Rochelle. He does a leadership podcast about leaders, obviously. And I've listened to several of them because I feel like they're super relevant and encouraging. If you're in ministry and really struggling in the leadership department, it's showing you that, like, at the end of the day, as leaders, we have to expect that, like, we can be replaced. We have to constantly be looking for the gold in other people so that we can help them become the leaders that they're supposed to be. Like, what are we doing? How is that servicing what we've been given if we're not giving it to other people and we're not entrusting other people with leadership? So it's been really amazing to listen to some of the stuff that he has to give and offer. And he's a phenomenal man of God, loves the Lord so much. So I think, for the question, what does it mean to be a Christian leader? I think it does go back to the three main criteria, like we learned from our book. It is all about having the conviction, the culture, and then the construct, which is basically the systems that are in place to help you fulfill this leadership. And so to be a Christian leader, it means that, like, you have to be sold out for the Lord. You have to trust that this authority is God-given and that he is trusting you to live this out in a way that will bless others. And then you have to trust also that, like, the way that you are responding to certain situations is what's going to affect everything around you as a whole. I think we can get so caught up in what leadership looks like, when in reality, I think sometimes we forget that, like, as I've said before, leadership is completely, like, it is God-given. It's something that God raises up inside of us. And I think as, like, people who are in ministry and people who are on staff at a church, I think it's so important for them to realize, like, this is a blessing, but this is also, like, this is what I've been called to. Like, I haven't just been called to minister. I've been called to lead. Wherever you're coming from, like, whether it's in pastoral care, whether it says the executive pastor, like, you are called to lead in those moments. So I think there is a big difference between, leadership in the secular world and leadership in a church. And I do think that those differences are very evident. I think when you lead from a Christian standpoint, you're leading as someone who, is really all in and sold out for the Lord and working towards heavenly goals. So yeah, I'm, like I said, very excited for this class. I'm excited to kind of see where we go from here. Our books are amazing. And I can't wait to work with you guys. So I hope you'll have a good night. Sorry this was all over the place. I'm new at this. Bye.